Does the cold weather make you more susceptible to catching a cold? Let's break it down. First, the common cold virus thrives better in the cooler temperature of the nose. And this is in part due to the fact that innate immune system doesn't operate properly at the cooler temperature. Second, cold air contains little water vapor. Heating this indoors makes the environment very dry, and that dries out the mucus layer in the nose and throat. And the mucus is the first line of defense that traps and removes the inhaled viral particles. So to stay healthy, humidify the indoors, keep hydrated, and keep your nose warm. So the cold weather can make you more susceptible to catching a cold.
I chose public health because
I chose public health because
many things led me to public health.
it's one of the fields that I feel like can alleviate human suffering, which is something that I'm passionate about.
In every generation, somebody does something that saves millions of lives in public health. And I'm not saying I'm going to be the one, but the article of faith that keeps me coming into the office every day is the fact that we have the wherewithal and the questions that could change the course of millions of people's lives for the better.
When I was 8, my mom was getting her PhD in risk analysis and epidemiology, and she was working on the response to Chernobyl. And I grew up in the library watching her analyze data from Chernobyl that had real impacts for people who were affected by a real disaster. And that's where it started for me.
when I was very young, it was instilled in me and my family to be in service to the world. So my parents really modeled being in service to other people. And through that, I realized that I have an obligation to do what I can with whatever I can, when I can. And really, in public health is the values that no one person is more or less deserving of health. And so it really aligned with my own personal values. And it was an easy switch for me to go from research specifically into public health practice.
I graduated the year that COVID-19 pandemic hit, and I had already seen people's social and behavioral risk factors for certain chronic diseases that were then just made worse during the COVID-19 pandemic in my own family and in my community of Latin American, Caribbean, Cuban immigrants specifically. And I was kind of like, this is my field now. This is where I need to go. This is how I can make the biggest impact in my community with the privileges that I have.
I've been working at Project Access for the last 13 years, a community organization that helps patients with access to urgent specialty care needs. And when they come to us, they're either in pain or they're desperate, they have financial constraints, they don't have insurance. So it's really rewarding to see lives change when we're able to navigate them through the healthcare system.
Coming from Ghana, and I've been infected multiple times from some of the prevailing sickness or diseases like malaria, diarrhea, I got involved to be able to be part of people that can provide solutions to reduce the burden of these infectious diseases in sub-Saharan Africa.
I chose public health because it centers community. Public health is a field that knows that the answers to some of the most complex and intractable societal problems that we face, the answers already exist in our community, in our neighborhoods, in our families, and public health really centers those individuals, those families, and those systems to bring out the natural assets and resilience.
Me as a Black man, I have a personal stake in alleviating a lot of these disparities and inequities that are present within our system that perpetuate the existing care gaps or the continuous chronic illnesses within low-income communities. Wanting to have some stake in being able to contribute to my community and populations as a whole. And that's what brought me to public health.
It's to empower those who lack the resources, lack the capacity, lack the voice to advance their own interest in care. And really being able to bridge those gaps is something that is deeply connected to public health at its core and to why I chose the field.
I chose public health because I realized that there was more to health than just medication, going to the doctor. There's a lot of barriers that really prevent people from having access to health and health care.
To me, public health is the foundation of a healthy society. It is what allows us all to live socially, psychologically, and economically fulfilling lives. Without that base of a healthy environment, a healthy structure to society, and the ability to make decisions that enhance our and our family's health, we don't have anything. That's why I do public health.
Yale stood out because Yale offered a curriculum flexibility unparalleled to the other institutions I was looking at the time. And what I mean by that, at Yale, I not only have the privilege of taking courses and learning from distinguished faculty at the School of Public Health, but I can take learning and being able to glean the perspectives from courses at the School of Management, but also at the law school. And coming into the field of public health, it's a very multidisciplinary field, and you need those perspectives to get inclusive approaches to solutions that impact communities who are not single population communities, but are really multifaceted, and solutions are multifaceted, and you need these lenses from various different disciplines to culminate those things together. And so that flexibility offered me lots of range as far as the courses I was able to take.
Yeah, there are many incredible public health schools in the country. I think Yale specifically really focused on the social and systemic risk factors of chronic diseases and of many different health challenges that affect my Latina community specifically. And so, of course, I am in the social and behavioral sciences department, and so focusing on those social, systemic, behavioral risk factors of disease was incredibly important to me, especially since my own family struggles with a lot of chronic diseases due to stress of overwork, due to economic pressures, due to underlying genetic predispositions that are exacerbated by systemic inequities. And YSPH really focuses on all of that in my curriculum so far, and very uniquely. And so that I had to choose YSPH as my school.
Yale, I was researching different universities, and Yale has this very unique program in environmental health sciences that focuses more on the integration of environmental engineering, medicine, and public health. And that very much matches my interest in my educational background, because I wanted to get into environmental health sciences that focuses more on how the environment impacts the people and the community. And that is exactly what I got involved in when I got here. So I was able to research on the fresh air clip that monitored air quality and how, people are impacted in their work with what kind of air they're exposed to. And to me, that was very valuable, both as a chemical engineer and as a doctor. And I found that specific field only in Yale. So that's what really led me to choose Yale.
Hunter came into my life specifically to be a working dog. He's responded to multiple hurricanes and tornadoes with me over the past decade. I believe that every dog has a purpose, but our working dogs are more than just pets. They're our partners, and we ask them to do things that humans can't do. I noticed that he had a slight limp. I was worried that he might have torn his knee, which is a common thing for our working dogs. So I went into my local veterinarian, and they were of the same mindset. He's probably overdone it. Let's just monitor and give him some anti-inflammatory. And I said, no, I don't care what the expense is. Please go ahead and x-ray all 4 legs and his spine. And the veterinarian came back with tears in her eyes and told me that it was most likely cancer in his front leg.
Dogs, just like humans, get cancer spontaneously. They grow and metastasize and mutate just like human cancers do. I'm an immunologist at Yale. More recently, we have really applied what we've learned in the immunology of other diseases towards cancer. About 1 in 4 dogs will get a cancer over time. There are very few novel cancer immunotherapies for the treatment of dog cancers. So we began developing a therapeutic vaccination. Our early studies included a number of very interesting patients. Among them, a golden retriever that was trained to find survivors in catastrophic building collapses, and it got a fairly serious bone cancer, had to have amputation of the affected limb. I was contacted by the owner if they could get involved in our clinical trial. Indeed, they did.
I knew that I wanted to approach Hunter's cancer diagnosis as an integrative process. I consulted with Mark, I consulted with oncology team at Ohio State University's veterinary hospital. It's horrifying to consider amputating a dog's limb, especially a dog who a few weeks ago was running around on a rubble pile searching for victims. But a lot of friends who are veterinarians said he's a perfect candidate. I did the first vaccine before the amputation, and then I did the second vaccine after the amputation, but before we started chemotherapy.
35% of dogs with osteosarcoma will live 12 months after diagnosis. And that's with conventional therapy. Adding our vaccination immunotherapy to that almost doubles the probability of survival in this particular type of dog cancer.
There's the barking. I'm really happy to say that Hunter is 22 months post-diagnosis, and he is full of life, and I know just how fortunate I am. Had I not been connected with Mark, it wouldn't matter how much money I had. That vaccine, if it didn't exist, it wouldn't have been there as part of his care.
My own dog passed away of an inoperable cancer about 11 years ago now. Dogs, just like humans, suffer greatly from their cancers. If we can provide some benefit, some relief, pain-free life, that is the best outcome that we could ever have.
Good boys.
Public health is at a moment of transformation, and at any moments of transformation, innovation and entrepreneurship become more important.
Innovation is a necessity for public health and the future of the field because public health itself began with innovation. From the first smallpox vaccine to the days of John Snow and the Broad Street pump and identifying the roots of cholera. Public health has had to innovate to succeed.
Innovation is essential because the society that we're working with and trying to protect from the ills of public health problems is a society that's changing very quickly. And when a society changes quickly, we need to innovate in response to that.
The world's most pressing issues demand our attention, and innovation is a way for us to think outside of the box and come up with solutions in a way that is faster, more efficient, and allows us to solve problems with greater success.
A lot of the things that are being done in public health are that date back so many decades, right? And they don't really tie in to current context, you know. There's a lot of room to be able to leverage things like technology to make the processes and a lot of public health interventions more efficient and more effective.
Despite what we know works in public health science and best practice, we still have significant health inequities here in the US and globally. And so to me, the purpose of innovation in the public health context is to really say, how do we ensure that the broadest number of people or the broadest scope of population can benefit from what we know works in public health science? And unfortunately, we're not there today. And so innovative approaches are needed to try to get us there. As an alum of the school, I was someone who was very entrepreneurial at that time. And what excites me is that when I'm back on campus now, there's even more entrepreneurial energy than when I was a student around public health and around social justice in this area.
The field of public health has always been known for innovation, but we've not traditionally thought about how to make sure that our innovations are sustainable and easily spread and shared with the world. That's why this theme of innovation and entrepreneurship is one of the things that I see as most important for our school. It's actually one of the things that drew me to this position at the Yale School of Public Health, was the potential for collaboration with Yale Ventures, with Sci-City, and with others across the larger Yale community who are also doing this work. Going forwards, for public health to have the greatest impact, we have to think about our work using some of those core skill sets that folks at the School of Management know all so well. And we need to train our students in those skills as well.
The 2020 Rita Wilson Prize that was supported by Innovate Health Yale, and they use machine learning to analyze red blood cells to help screen for disease. And they've had a lot of interesting impacts, particularly in sickle cell, and now they're expanding to other types of blood diseases. BRIO is a mental health platform that uses community-led models of care, and it's really innovative because they are helping to support mental health and well-being, but are really taking in the expertise of the local communities where they work. So to date, Innovate Health Yale has supported over 52 startups operating in over 30 countries, and we've given out about $400,000 in impact grants. And the really exciting thing is that we've seen our alumni go on to continue to be supported by Techstars, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative,
wasn't seen as the most sexy innovation, right? And so I think in public health, there are lots of ways we can support more inclusive design and more equitable innovation. And it's not always about what we say are the sexy gadgets, but there's existing technology which can be used in really novel ways to connect people to care. As a senior fellow and lecturer at the Yale School of Public Health, I'm working within the Department of Health Policy and Management to really support the dean's pillar around innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think when you think about innovation and entrepreneurship, that's a lot of what we think about, is how do we take things that work through what we know is best practice in public health and really scale them to increase well-being and improve well-being for a lot of people. And so I feel like at the core of public health and the mission of the school is that ethos of really supporting communities at population scale. And that's what really drew me to the school as well.
Everything my team at the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab does, we do with the full support of the Yale community, from fundraising to data analysis to bringing the unique types of expertise from satellite
Public health modelers try to use mathematics to portray how systems in public health will work, whether those are how people will behave, how epidemics will travel through a population, how diseases will affect individual patients. But one way or another, we're looking at the mathematical portrayal of these systems in order to understand them and predict where they're going to go next. So the thing that brought us all together was the fact that each of us had begun to recognize that the problems we were working on were really big, were really important, were really time constrained. Urgent decisions needed to be made, even though the data wasn't all there to answer them, the money wasn't there to finance the studies, the ethics of the situation required us to back off of the traditional approaches like observational studies and randomized controlled trials. And it was when those traditional methods broke down that each of us began to gravitate toward mathematical modeling as the very next best way to answer these urgent questions that demanded a response. The Public Health Modeling Unit contributes to the data-driven leadership activities of the School of Public Health by asking the question of the value of information. How do you know when it makes sense to take the time and go to the expense of acquiring new information as opposed to making a decision today, knowing full well that the decision to wait is one that carries its own costs and consequences. The forces driving the health of populations are moving at a speed that we've never seen before. The public health practitioners of the 21st century are going to need a much more extensive toolkit that includes modeling alongside all that they've already been acquiring in epidemiology and biostatistics and economics.
The Public Health Modeling Unit is giving me personally a set of tools that can help me understand the epidemic of HIV that's been around for many decades in a new way to help us get treatments to people more quickly, to develop better prevention strategies. But it's all because this set of expertise here that's been mobilized around epidemics like HIV, COVID, RSV, rotavirus, pneumococcus, provide new tools to understand old and new epidemics.
Typhoid fever is still a major cause of morbidity and mortality in many parts of the world, particularly countries that don't have good water and sanitation. And recently there have been new typhoid conjugate vaccines that have been developed. And we've really been working with partners in countries such as Bangladesh, Nepal, and Malawi to conduct vaccine trials to see how well these vaccines work in those settings and better understand the transmission routes of typhoid fever within the population. And then have been using models to better understand, well, what is the potential impact of these vaccines as they're rolled out to countries throughout the world. I think that the modeling concentration is really something that attracts students to the Yale School of Public Health, in that it really showcases the quantitative courses that we offer in modeling when it comes to things like understanding infectious disease dynamics, to analyzing infectious disease data, cost-effectiveness analysis, and operational research, as well as different statistical techniques used for analyzing surveillance data and such.
In terms of career growth, there's always a way where the faculty help early career scientists to develop into independent career researchers, and also when there's any questions, there are always experts available to support.
towards understanding these hotspots where individuals get cancer at higher rates than at other places. I think the Yale School of Public Health has a very great appreciation of the complexity of the society we live in, and the fact that the society that we live in is changing very rapidly. And so at the core of its mission is the idea that we need to develop the science that underlies the policy decision making and the science progress that we need to make in terms of innovation.
I chose public health mainly because
I chose public health because
my reason for choosing public health was really deeply rooted in my personal experiences.
Many things led me to public health.
Having worked as a physician in a low and middle income country, participating in work in public health allowed me to see that we can treat people, or we can address the needs of the people, not just one patient at a time, but as a community as a whole. And that for me was very valuable, because working in public health allowed me to integrate environmental engineering, medicine, and public health and see it in a more impactful way.
I remember my family, we moved from Detroit to a suburban area outside of the city. And while I was young at the time, I really couldn't ignore the stark differences in racial demographics, but also urban development. And it really sparked a curiosity, didn't know what it looked like and meant at the time, and how to really conceptualize that. Now, understanding that move that I had when I was younger from those two disparate communities, just 30 miles apart, but had a 10-year difference in life expectancy. That stark difference was something that propelled me into the field.
I graduated the year that COVID-19 pandemic hit. So who were the frontline workers during the pandemic? It was people like my parents. It was people like those in my Cuban community, immigrant community, Latina community that were still pushed to or had to go to work and expose themselves to COVID-19. And I had already seen people's social and behavioral risk factors for certain chronic diseases that were then just made worse during the COVID-19 pandemic in my own family and in my community. And that's why I came back to graduate school to get my master's in public health, because I feel like I can hopefully be a mouthpiece for my community.
I have been doing HIV projects for almost 10 years, and my work has always been community-based. Just seeing that human side is so important in terms of designing projects that are actually going to benefit the populations we're trying to serve. Public health isn't just about health outcomes, it's about analyzing our society and the environment that we're a part of and seeing how that has an impact on our health.
It's one of the fields that really, I feel like, can alleviate human suffering, which is something that I'm passionate about.
What's really important about public health is it's really the bedrock of everything, and it really has components in almost everything here. So if we think of all the schools at Yale, public health has a component within each and every school.
I believe that the Yale School of Public Health has the chance to define public health scholarship, education, and practice for the next century, to define who's part of public health, how we do it, how we identify and address health problems in an inclusive, equitable, and impactful way. The ultimate objective for the Yale School of Public Health is for us to be recognized globally as the school that is transforming the future of human health. I see there being 4 pillars of a school of public health that defines the future of our field. Those are inclusivity. It is, of course, core to the field of public health, but it's also how we are going to succeed as we move forward. Inclusivity is about having a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and belonging-focused environment within our school for faculty, staff, and students. But it's also about being inclusive of community voices, of lived experience, of folks who we may not traditionally think of as being part of public health at all. Innovation and entrepreneurship, making sure that we're set up to make sure that public health innovations can thrive in either for-profit or not-for-profit environments. The third pillar is around communication. As we learned all too well during COVID, it's essential for all of us, students, faculty, and the world at large, to know how to communicate about public health and scientific knowledge. The last pillar that is essential for us as we move forward into the public health school of the future is around data-driven leadership. That's the ability for us to use our disciplinary skills to identify problems, gather data sets to look at the details, and then figure out what to do next. Public health is only as good as the action that we take at the other side, the impact that we have on the health of our local community as well as the nation and the globe. Those are the skills that we have to impart in our students, but also that we as faculty and staff and alumni need to be dedicated to. CEA Winslow founded our School of Public Health 108 years ago, based on the idea that core to public health is the community, and also core to public health is empowering the community for change. That's one of the philosophies that informs my leadership style in general, informs my decision to assume the deanship here at the Yale School of Public Health, and that is core to our function as a School of Public Health. But going forwards, it is incumbent on us to do more. Public health only succeeds when we have the public at its core, when we listen to, partner with, and sometimes are led by the needs of the communities in which we work. As an emergency physician, I know that I'm only as good as the team that I work with. And so my commitment as a leader is to making sure that everyone on my team is set up for success, knows what their role is, and is empowered to do everything that they can for the greater good. So here at Yale, we have tremendous potential to influence and make progress on firearm injury prevention, both within the School of Public Health, but also in partnership with other schools across Yale. We have a number of brilliant researchers at the Yale School of Public Health who are already thinking about many of those baseline risk factors for firearm injury and how to modify them. We have a tremendous opportunity to set the standard, not just as an academic community, but as a city and as a state that can help lead the rest of the nation. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your commitment to the Yale School of Public Health.
Climate change has been named to be the most serious public health challenge of the 21st century, and that's for myriad reasons. The most obvious one is heat. And heat itself, it's estimated, every year causes several 100,000 deaths around the world. But it's not just heat. We have the other extreme weather events that are becoming more common and intense with climate change. And all of those have serious health consequences. One aspect that's underappreciated now is that all of these extreme events cause population displacement. People lose their homes, and that causes long-term medical issues. In addition, there are issues with infectious diseases. Because the world is getting warmer, mosquitoes and ticks tend to live better in a warming world. So we're seeing an expansion of what we call vector-borne diseases. We're also very concerned about the adverse health effects of human activities that cause climate change, most notably the burning of fossil fuels. It emits toxic air pollutants. The vision of the Yale Center on Climate Change and Health is a safe and stable climate in which human health and diverse ecosystems can thrive. And also, very importantly, we integrate social justice into all of our work.
When people first think of climate change, the image people think of is polar bear. But polar bear is too distant. What we try to argue here is climate change is essentially a public health issue. It is about the heart health of your parents, about the mental health of your kids, about the kidney health of you. So this is really about you, your friends, your neighbors, your family. In order to achieve that mission, we need to reveal the full spectrum of the climate change impacts on health. Because if people don't know about it, then of course people can just ignore it. When we study climate change and health, it's essentially because the climate problem is a multidisciplinary problem. It's a problem that the whole society faces. Thus, it requires a whole societal approaches, ranging from climate science, air pollution science, environmental epidemiology, machine learning approaches, cardiology, all the different approaches together to understand really how climate change could impact our health. The ultimate goal of the Chen Lab is to produce policy-relevant scientific evidence. Our recent research focusing on the ambient carbon monoxide impacts on mortality in multiple countries around the world. That research supports World Health Organization's ambient air quality guidelines for carbon monoxide for the first time.
The online certificate program is one of the first, if not the first, of its kind in the country, if not the world, geared towards working professionals. And the real goal of this program is to bring folks from around the disciplines and professions needed to make strides on climate change and health. So we have a concentration in climate change and health for MPH students. The great thing about how this is designed is that because it's a concentration, it brings students from around the entire school, and so all of the departments of the school, to learn about climate change and health and how they can apply the skills and the knowledge from their particular programs.
Our policy and practice pillar is critical to assuring that our work has impact. We need to take our research and our education and link it with what's happening on the ground, particularly for an issue like climate change and health, where there are important policy decisions happening today. There's important interventions that need to happen to protect people's health. The Center on Climate Change and Health worked closely with the Department of Public Health in Connecticut to apply for and receive a CDC Climate and Health grant. There are only a few of these grants given around the country, so it's a big deal for Connecticut to have one for the first time. Through the grant, they established an Office of Climate and Public Health. This office will work with local health departments, with communities, with other stakeholders to develop strategies to protect people's health, especially around heat and air quality here in Connecticut. We've traditionally thought about climate change as something that happens far away, somewhere else in the future to non-humans, but that's not true. We know that it's happening right now here in our communities and that it's affecting our health. What's powerful about that is that it means that we can engage people on it in a way that feels really upfront in their lives. And so a lot of our work is working with communities, talking about these issues, finding solutions that are addressing their current priorities, addressing their health and how it's affected by climate change, and also addressing the kinds of drivers of climate change in their homes, in their transportation systems, that those solutions have a health benefit too.
The protection of water resources and the provision of high-quality drinking water is a key priority for public health. The Federal Safe Drinking Water Act protects the public from legacy, well-known contaminants. However, there are certain chemicals which we call emerging contaminants that might be present in our drinking water. Emerging contaminants represent a special challenge because the very limited availability of information regarding them. And most importantly, they are not regulated by federal or state. 1,4-dioxane is a stabilizer that has been used with many organic solvents, that it is difficult to be filtered from the drinking water. So wherever there was a chemical spill of solvents, the 1,4-dioxane was with them. And it has been detected in several Superfund sites throughout the United States and internationally. Superfund sites are areas that there is a contamination, a chemical spill, or environmental release of chemicals by the chemical industry. We decided to develop a research center primarily focusing on this chemical. The Yale Superfund Research Center aims to study the role of 1,4-dioxane in human health, as well as better methods of detecting it in the environment and also better ways of mitigating that from the drinking water. Based on studies, 1,4-dioxane is a probable human carcinogen. Therefore, we are aiming to study the molecular mechanism by which 1,4-dioxane, along or with its co-contaminants, may cause cancer. And at the same time, we are aiming to develop biomarkers of exposure to these chemicals, since there is no epidemiological studies confirming the carcinogenicity of this compound in humans. Dr. Diesel and her colleagues are investigating the exposure assessment of 1,4-dioxane in human populations.
Project 2 is an exposure assessment study, which is the study of how people come into contact with chemicals as they move through their everyday lives. This could be pollutants in the air that they breathe, chemicals in the food they're eating, the personal care products they're using, or even contaminants in their drinking water. It's really important to understand what people are exposed to, so we have to know who is exposed to what amounts. Certain populations may have higher levels of these chemicals in their drinking water or in their blood, and that will help us understand whether or not they're at risk for any health problems. Our study area includes 2 counties on Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk counties, and these 2 counties are home to dozens of state and federal Superfund sites. We're going to hundreds of homes on Long Island to interview people about the consumer products they're using, collect their drinking water and test it for chemicals, collect blood samples to look for health markers, and map where people live in relation to hazardous waste sites. Another reason why exposure assessment is so important is because by identifying communities with higher levels of exposures, that can help direct some of the interventions. So some of the other projects in this Superfund Center are developing treatment devices that could be deployed in homes that have particularly high levels of 1,4-dioxane or other chemicals in their drinking water.
1,4-dioxane is a very difficult pollutant to treat if it is in groundwater because it's so tiny and it loves water. It doesn't like to stick to the surface. So because of that property, the conventional method to treat pollutants does not work well for 1,4-dioxane. We are trying to use electricity, and electric power is going to produce oxidation power, meaning destruction power. Destruction of 1,4-dioxane by hydroxyl radical is a proven chemistry, but it is extremely difficult to realize in a smaller scale setting. In this center, what we are trying to do is to make a small modular system. For user's point of view, you just plug in, connect the pipe, and it destroys 1,4-dioxane. That's the goal, and we are at the initial stage of realizing that goal.
So one critically important aspect of the Superfund Center is the Community Engagement Core. And I'm leading that along with Adrian Esposito, who is the Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment, which is a large grassroots organization based in Long Island that has a long history of working on drinking water quality issues in the study area. It's a very rich partnership between the university and the community, and the community is directly providing input into the science. So as scientists, we're not just going into communities and studying what we think is important. We're asking the people who live there what they're concerned about, and their concerns and ideas are directly informing our research questions and our science. Doing the science is incredibly important, but once the work is done and the results are in, it's really important to format the results and information in a way that's useful to the community and to policymakers.
It is very important that we inform stakeholders and legislators regarding toxic limits of those emerging contaminants in our drinking water. So eventually, we would like to inform policy on setting up standards for our drinking water.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness.
As a medical student and resident, I had a wonderful infectious disease mentor who introduced me to colleagues of his at the Peace Corps headquarters in Washington, D.C., where I was kind of introduced to the world of infectious disease epidemiology. People who were incredibly committed to making a difference in the world. And then when I came to Yale for my infectious disease training, I was welcomed into a research lab that was focused again on parasitic worms and neglected tropical diseases. And I think at each of those points, my mentors really helped me crystallize in my mind why it's important to work on diseases that are endemic in some of the poorest parts of the world, and also how research can actually make a difference and help improve the lives of people who are at risk of acquiring those infections. What I think is perhaps most impressive about the scope of research that's happening in EMD is that it focuses on important infections that are occurring literally around the corner to what's happening on the other side of the world. And all of these people are working together in close proximity, and they're sharing their wisdom and their expertise, and all the while they're mentoring students. And one of the things that our department at EMD certainly is known for is not just the ability to do cutting-edge research, but also hands-on, intensely mentored research experience to sort of fill in that next generation of research leaders.
Dreams are irresponsible, but they're always possible. If you just believe, you could be so remarkable. Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off the moment I gotta make it. I'm saving every day to taste it, I'm patient. But my mind, it can hardly take it. I'm chasing a dream that I had for several ages.
To modeling the impact of vaccination and other control measures. Through EMD faculty, we've led the contact tracing program both locally as well as for the state. We co-chair the Governor's Commission that essentially helps to advise on the state of Connecticut's response. And so I really consider confident that there's not a single unit on campus that has had a more positive impact in helping to guide the response in an evidence-based and responsible way than EMD, and frankly has saved lives. One of the things that was made very clear from the pandemic was the need for a larger, more capable public health workforce that can predict, respond to, and ultimately prevent the next infectious disease epidemic. It's a perfect time for people interested in public health to consider pursuing training in infectious disease epidemiology.
And I think for our department, what binds us and what kind of creates our identity and culture is principles of equity and justice. The way we study, the way we form the department itself is grounded in those principles. And once you focus on things like equity and justice, it's hard not to make that a focus in every aspect of what you do. So we try to really imbue those principles in how we run the departments, how we select speakers, how we treat and interact with staff and students and the community. We are a culture who really believes in student voice. Most of what we do that I think is good has emanated from students and students' ideas. We really look at this department as shared with the students. Our students are part of every kind of major decision that we make. They're part of all our search committees, and that's purposeful, again, from a equity and justice perspective. You know, we're all in our department come from different disciplines, different approaches, different backgrounds, but we all share this common interest on making the world more just and equitable. One of our interests is in kind of this built environment. How do we change the environment for better health? This is an inclusive design class where public health and architecture students would work with an organization that provides services for unhoused individuals. And so we're going to work with them to create a place with the goal of it being inclusive and that serves the needs and wants of the community. John Pachankas's research has been cited in Supreme Court cases that were cited to improve the rights and well-being of LGBTQ community individuals. Danya Keene's work, she's actually on the New Haven Housing Commission. She does work on housing and health, so can take her work that she does and implement that into actual practice of New Haven housing laws and policies. So we've had students who've developed apps for homeless teens and youth. We've had students who've created NGOs that are having amazing impact in local and statewide settings. And then we've had students who are on departments of health that are actually taking what they've learned in class and really using it to improve the policies, the local public health policies in their areas.
Spending on healthcare in the United States is 19% of GDP. It is the largest industry by far. Studying healthcare management and being involved in trying to improve the delivery of healthcare in the US is both a noble and a practical endeavor. And then on the policy side, there's always a lot of push and pull and, you know, increasingly arguments of misinformation or disinformation and things like that. So it's really important to have well-trained, rigorous thinkers in the world of health policy if we're going to improve the health for all across the United States and the world. So she has a legislative fellows program where she trains students and they're going and providing legislative research support to the state of Connecticut's legislature. That linking of research to the teaching and then giving the students an opportunity to take that research sort of expertise that they're developing and deploy it to affect policy is a real strength of the department. We have two faculty members, Chima Undemele and Jacob Wallace, who are working on issues around Medicaid policy, and in particular thinking about how to make Medicaid more efficient from an administrative perspective, and to help people who are in the Medicaid program make decisions around being enrolled, perhaps, you know, choosing between plans in states that allow for, you know, some privatization of Medicaid and choice, and a lot of work around how to make that Medicaid system better using some economic techniques. Zach Cooper's work, he's been working a long time on really, you know, high-level problematic health policy issues around the delivery of hospital care, billing for hospital care, and the relationship between that and insurance. And most recently his work has led to changes in how we think about balanced billing. And so Zach did a lot of work showing the negative impacts of these balanced billing practices, which ultimately led to federal legislation to change that. And then we have other faculty who are working in the areas of mental health and substance abuse policy. They're thinking about the delivery of healthcare services for those with mental health, whether they could be delivered more efficiently, and also thinking about those areas of mental health care services that perhaps aren't efficient and are consuming resources that could be deployed elsewhere in areas that would be more effective. We have two faculty members in particular, Jamie Tam and Abigail Friedman, who are still thinking very hard about the problem of tobacco and its consumption and the issues around that, particularly as it relates to children and things like electronic cigarettes. We have Jason Schwartz, who's been working hard on thinking about things like the groups that make decisions around vaccines and whether they're to be approved. And this has been a serious question, and people hesitate actually to get the vaccine still because it hasn't gone through the traditional FDA approval process the way vaccines historically did. And he's done a lot of work along with one of our senior colleagues, David Paul-Thiel, in thinking about policy modeling around how people respond to these different bits of information that come out about COVID vaccines and other COVID prevention measures. When the pandemic first started, they were integral to the state of Connecticut, Yale University, and some of what they put out was a model used around the country by other universities and other states for COVID mitigation measures. So if we're talking about real-world impact, we have faculty that are doing work that's changing lives day by day.
I think right now is really maybe the best timing to start studying biostatistics. After a long accumulation of data, empirical evidences from clinical trials, from observational studies, from all the field research we have done, finally, I think we have all the data to make breakthrough. So this is a perfect timing. And very interestingly, if you open a public health or medical journal from 10 years ago and compare to a journal published, let's say, this month, you will clearly see this increase in data-based research. So public health and medical research nowadays relies more and more on data. Also, biostatistics is the only field that can combine the power of mathematics, statistics, computer science, and health informatics. The goal of the Biostat shared resource is to provide analytic support to all cancer center projects and investigators. We have been involved in designing studies, monitoring studies, analyzing data, and finally presenting our findings. We have a sport in skin cancer to analyze data collected here and also from other institutes, from our collaborators, to really understand this biological process, how UV interact with certain genes, and how that interactions, that combined effects, can increase skin cancer risk, can lead to fast prognosis, and finally better response to cancer treatment. Our modelers have made significant contributions to COVID modeling. Our research has had a direct impact on how the state deal with COVID, and to the best of my knowledge, has had a direct impact on how policy was made at a national level. And also, we have a very strong implementation science center. It's one thing to design a perfect study on paper, but it's totally a different story how to actually implement that and how to really deal with real problems you will encounter in the real world. Our researchers have been working on how to better design, conduct, and analyze clinical trials and observational studies in the United States and also worldwide. Also, we have been conducting omics and imaging research. Just try to better understand cancer, cardiovascular disease, mental disorders, and the biomarkers my colleagues identified have been direct target for pharmaceutical companies. So some have entered early and middle stage clinical trials, and those findings can have a really direct impact on how we treat those complex diseases in the near future.
Chronic conditions such as heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, they're common, they're costly, and they're highly preventable, and are also becoming much more prominent globally. So I think as a societal perspective, I think it's really important to consider all of these conditions that really play a large role in our healthcare system as far as burden, and also the issue on individuals and families that suffer from these chronic conditions. A number of our faculty are very involved in cancer research, where they have really gone from understanding what some of the risk factors are for recovery, and then thinking about not just what are some of these lifestyle issues, like being more active, managing your weight, managing other risk factors, but then going to targeted interventions, and interventions that are being brought into the clinics so that they have really high impact for those at risk. Two of our students in the department have been working with a data set looking at recovery of young patients with heart disease, at whether or not perceived discrimination might be associated with recovery in the first year after a young person had a heart attack. And what they found was that there was an association between individuals that reported high levels of perceived discrimination and worse outcomes in terms of symptomatology. We also, out of our department, had a paper that just got published in the journal Stroke that was looking at disparities in national trends of recurrent stroke. So there are about 800,000 strokes a year. About 200,000 people have a recurrent stroke. We were interested in understanding whether there could be differences by age, sex, socioeconomic status, and where you live. And what we found is over a long period of time, from 2001 to 2017, in fact, there were areas in the country that had persistently high recurrent rates. And these particular areas were also where there was health inequity, there were differences in socio-demographic characteristics, and it really underscores, I think, the importance of good disease surveillance, using epidemiologic methods to not only understand acute conditions, but aspects of long-term care and recovery. We need to think of many aspects of recovery for the individual. What unique characteristics do they have that may impact the way that they recover from a chronic illness or an acute condition? I think also a very important aspect is how do we get health messaging across different communities? How do you tell the stories that really have effective consequences? Not everything fits every person, and so I think a lot of our faculty are really working on tailored messaging, not only for different populations, but different health conditions, and I think that's an essential component that we need to be thinking about globally.
As the industrial era has been developed, we have a lot of pollution that has been generated. The highest rate of deaths on Earth is due to pollution, about 9.2 million per year. And it is very important not only to do the research, but also to develop the new generation of scientists that they will lead the field. So how we can eliminate the risks to exposure to chemicals from the environment is how we can improve the well-being of humans. We have the Center on Climate Changes and Health. They're doing a lot of work in terms of studying the changes of the temperature, and what are the effects on mental health, and also how the changes of the climate affect the ecosystem. And also the wildfires has a major effect because they create a lot of particulate matter and a lot of pollution that could affect the human health. So it's a very important issue, which again, it has a major implication into the changes in human health. So we're exposed to multiple factors every day, which can really cause a disease. So one of our faculty has developed a very novel method by which you can monitor every individual to what they have been exposed to. And then you can determine what is the exposure, what is the health effects on that. We also have faculty who is the father of the green chemistry. In other words, how we can make a new world, helping to develop sustainable chemicals that you can use them that will not have an impact on, on human health. The 1.4 dioxane, which is a stabilizer of several organic solvents that can cause cancer. This chemical, it's a water contaminant, can go to the soil from all the exposures, and then it can get up to your drinking water. It's very difficult to be filtered. This Superfund is trying to study the mechanism by which this chemical can cause liver cancer. The other important thing about the center is it's one of the few projects throughout Yale that brings 4 Yale schools together. I'm a big fan of collaboration. I think this is the uniqueness of our department. So we're very good in connecting the department, and not only with the other departments within the School of Public Health, but also with other schools of Yale. And then also we collaborate with state agencies, with the community. So it's very important not only for our department, our faculty to be in touch with them, but also to pass this kind of mentality to our students. How as scientists, how we do the community engagement, how we listen to the community that tell us what are their concerns and direct our research towards that.
We're really excited about this study that we just completed, in which we were for the first time able to track single neurons as they're kind of being placed within the brain. The field has known for many years that these neurons are very precisely placed. But how that precise placement happens is not really well understood. We were able to collaborate with physicists to develop these microscopes that enabled very gentle imaging throughout development to be able to capture those early events. And let me show you how these videos look. We can see early on the first neurons appearing, and then neurons growing out into what will be the brain. And then we were able to label single cells and understand how is this cell selecting its placement. And then it was through a process that we called retrograde zippering. It's like, it looks very much like zippering backwards, the way that you close a gene, for example. Here, we're seeing this blue neuron, and it's gonna zipper backwards, starting at that point where that green arrow is, as to meet that other pink neuron that is in the correct neighborhood. You can see it actually closing the gap, that black space there, as it's now meeting the correct neighborhood. This is very important. What we're able to do with this microscope is track those events as they're actually occurring and ascribe specific genetic functions to these molecules that we're identifying in that sequence of events. If your car breaks down, the reason that a mechanic can actually fix the car is because there was an engineer that built the car and they understand how the car works. So over here, we have a system that we didn't build. We cannot ask the engineer. So we have to reverse engineer how it works to be able to understand first how it functions and then how it functions incorrectly, which has implications to diseases such as autism, neurodevelopmental disorders, mental retardation, etc. But it's a fundamental question that we need to understand if we have an aspiration to be able to understand how these circuits form and how they form incorrectly in neurodevelopmental diseases.
What is a plant-forward diet? Hi, my name is Rafi Tahirian. I'm the Associate Vice President of Yale Hospitality. Let's talk about this great alternative to your diet. A plant-forward diet is a style of eating that emphasizes and celebrates minimally processed, plant-based food. This diet consists of fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes, whole grain, and yes, even a little bit of responsibly produced meat. The idea comes from Mediterranean diets where animal protein is not at the center of the dish, but is instead used as a flavor enhancer. Unlike a vegetarian or vegan diet, it doesn't restrict your eating. A vegetarian diet completely eliminates meat, poultry, and fish, and a vegan diet excludes all animal products or byproducts. A plant-forward diet thoughtfully refocuses the meal on vegetables and fruits without eliminating animal products. A plant-forward diet is better for the planet and better for you. Animal-based food have a bigger carbon footprint than plant-based food. Plus, eating a plant-forward diet has been shown to reduce the risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. I have 3 recommendations. If you're following vegan or vegetarian diet, good for you. Just please don't rely heavily on super processed meat substitutes. Number 2 is be adventurous when it comes to food. The majority of people on this planet use fresh herbs, spice, fermented food, and all sorts of other cooking techniques to create delicious, healthy, and bold flavors. Try it, you might like it. 3, if you're moving toward a plant-forward diet, start with things that you know you like to eat. If it is not delicious to you, you won't be able to stick with it. Remember, it's better for you and better for the planet.
Being diagnosed definitely saved my life, and I'm very open about that because I think it's not something that's talked about enough. Autism, first of all, is very underdiagnosed, especially in women, because it presents differently. Growing up, I always felt so different, and I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't understand why I was interested in different things, or when it came to social communications, there was this disconnect. I didn't understand why that was. I felt very isolated and separated, and I wasn't happy with who I was, and I felt like I had to change that. My name is Olivia Schlepfer. I'm a senior here at Yale College, and I'm in the environmental studies major. I am neurodiverse, I am autistic, and I also have ADHD. Since being diagnosed and since being here at Yale, I've really come into my own. I accept who I am, and I'm also a lot easier on myself because I know my brain is structured differently, and that comes with so many amazing things. Like, I delight in such a very rich experience in this world from a sensory perspective. I feel very connected to our natural world. That's why I'm an environmental studies major. But it does also lead to some difficulties. Some of the things that I struggled academically with in my first year before getting diagnosed, for example, in long lectures during class, I'd have a lot of trouble sitting still, especially lecture formats. I couldn't stay focused for that amount of time. If professors were just writing things on the chalkboard and there weren't slides for me to consult, I felt very lost. I had a lot of trouble being able to stay focused and take notes. Even though I wanted to learn, there was some block where I couldn't, and that led to a lot of anxiety because I felt like I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know why I wasn't able to do the things that I'd been able to do in the past, or I didn't know why other people weren't struggling with these things. I'd go into exams and it would take me a lot longer to understand the questions, and sometimes I'd be so sure that I understood it, and yet I would interpret it differently and I would misinterpret it, and I wouldn't understand why that was. And I also wasn't able to finish exams because it would take me longer to be able to sort through the material or to understand the question. I would have to be, asking, like raising my hand, and I would feel very awkward and uncomfortable having to clarify things, and then maybe the professor wouldn't understand why I didn't understand, and I also didn't understand. And there was a lot of uncertainty, and that did create a lot of anxiety. And being able to get this diagnosis, to educate myself on, okay, this makes so much sense. I have all of these answers now to why I feel this way and why I experience the world the way that I do. And it's so much knowledge that I have now, and that's really allowed me to accept myself, and that's why now I'm so open about things, is because I want to help other people and be a voice for those who are struggling and don't know why, and haven't reached out for help yet, or are in the process, and aren't feeling like they love themselves for who they are. And I want to show that it's okay to be different, and being neurodiverse is beautiful, and it allows us to bring a different perspective to this world. For students coming into Yale who are autistic or have ADHD or another disability, I know that it can be stressful and overwhelming, and you don't know where to start. It's a new environment. You're coming into college, and it really does take you out of your comfort zone. It can be intimidating to approach professors and be like, actually, I do experience the world in a different way. I do learn differently. But I would say my experience with professors has been overwhelmingly positive. I would say just at the start of the semester to open that door for communication and to be honest. Professors are people too. They're people who have their own world experiences and can probably relate to a lot of the struggles that you deal with, even if it's not precisely in the same way. You have so many different resources to help you here, whether that's your first year counselor, your dean, your head of college, also mental health and counseling, student accessibility services, Porvu Center. There's so many different avenues for you to get the help and the support you need. And I think there is still a lot of stigma about, getting support, whether that be tutoring or therapy or academic accommodations, because it can make you feel less than, like, oh, I'm not good enough. But that's not how you should see it. It's not that you're not good enough, it's that you learn in a different way. Our academic system is set up for a certain neurotype, for people who learn a certain way. And academic accommodations that helps to level the playing field and to ensure fairness. It's not giving a leg up, or it's not, oh, extra help. No, it's allowing for there to be fairness and ensuring there's an even playing field so that everyone here at Yale can thrive.